Hi, my name is Josh Prewitt, and today I'm going to show you how to make a spoon from a log. Last night about 12:20 a.m. my wife woke me up and said, "Did you hear that?" I said, "What?" She said, "It sounds like somebody's dragging the table across the porch." And we're about to show you what it was. It was super exciting. So this is the first time I'm actually seeing it like up close in person. Let's check it out. So excited. Don't walk under it. Remote?
Oh yeah. They told me to play video games and not lead anything. Good thing we're professional.
So I put glue on the ends of these when I first got them to lessen the moisture escaping from the ends, which is where most of the water comes out of here a lot faster than out the sides. If you have a bandsaw, or lucky enough to have a bandsaw, this is the easiest, fastest way to make a spoon blank, which is the basic shape of the spoon without the bowl carved. It's just rough. So the more you can get it into the shape you need before you start carving, the less carving you have to do, and the more it saves your hands. And also, it's less likely to crack in that shape because it's small enough to move without cracking. Because when wood loses its moisture, it starts to shrink. And they don't shrink evenly. Always wear your safety gear. Got my earplugs and my safety glasses. This log is from the park. It's the one that fell off the tree probably about a month ago. It's just been sitting outside until I've had time to deal with it. Got some fungus in there. It's spalting. It's kind of cool. You can see that's not in the center. I'm going to cut this way to get a thicker piece off this side. Wow, look at that. Right down the middle. You can see I've got some knots and things. I like to not have knots, so I'm going to make this part my bowl. Went down and in. Got a knot here I'm going to take out. And the trick is to hold this really tight so it doesn't. That's the knot that goes to that, kind of matches up. like to kind of test is make sure it's strong enough. Sometimes at this point you find a weak spot and it just, especially when you have a knot or something pretty close to a joint. So this should be good. I'm going to show you, most people would just use this as a hook knife. The grain runs this direction, so you can see all those little lines. So I want to cut as much as I can across the grain. If I can cut this way, but if I get underneath it can split this way. Just start on the edges and work toward the middle. Gotta be careful not to slice yourself. Happens so often, or every so often. Hopefully not so often. Taking a little cuts out until it gets deep enough. I've got to clamp this down. This spins around and it's got sharp edges. So if you look real close at this spoon here, you can see the pith. That means the very center of the tree when it was a sapling. You can do all these things with a hatchet, a straight carving knife, and a hook knife. And it's a lot more peaceful and quiet. And it just takes longer. That took out most of the waste inside. So I like to get the bowl pretty close to the shape I want it. You can see I have to take off a bit of this lip because that's where that pith was. Just keep carving until that pith is gone. There you go. I actually have a thing called a spoon horse. It's a flat surface with two sticks coming in, and then you put your knees, the sticks come down, and you like this with your knees, and it pinches it and holds it in place. It's kind of a vise. It's very handy, actually. So if you ever see a spoon with all these little marks, it means somebody finished it with a knife rather than sanded it down. I like to kind of get it really close and then let it dry a lot more. And then when you use the knife, it actually almost gives it a polished look, because as you're cutting, it's actually burnishing all the fibers into place, and it makes it really smooth. It leaves the tool marks too. You always want to use wet wood whenever possible, because it's a lot easier to carve. Because you gotta think, all the fibers are interspersed with a bunch of water. It's easier to cut through water than it is a bunch of fibers stuck together. Sometimes I've even taken my spoon blanks, if I'm not going to get to them anytime soon, I'll get a bucket of water and throw all my spoons in there and just let them soak. This is that cherry tree that hit our cars the other night when it fell and broke off the main tree. This is a Sloyd knife. It's pretty thick on the back side and really sharp on the other side. This is a single edged blade, and I'm going to use it to make all this nice and round and smooth. Carving it's pretty satisfying and doesn't get sawdust in your nose so much. So if you can see, I'm using my arm as a lever, my thumb is the fulcrum, and the blade is the working edge. So that's how I'm getting all my power. And whenever you're using a knife like this, you want a slicing motion as much as you can get, because you're putting more of the knife through the wood. It's like slicing bread. You don't just push down. You have to, when you slice. I like to think of the grain like a hill. You always want to carve downhill. The grain pretty much runs straight this direction. So I have a little bit of a downhill here, and I have a downhill here. So I want to start at the top of the hill, and I want to carve down. And on this side, I want to carve downhill this way. Because if you don't, sometimes you can get stuck. If you start carving uphill, you grab that grain and pop the top of the hill off, which is not what you want, unless you're trying to get rid of a lot of wood all at once. But I'm thin enough in here, if I did that, I would be sad. I would have a hole in my spoon, a slotted spoon. You can get a little breastplate, like a piece of wood or something, and I hold it like this, and then I actually will use my arm here. And I'm just trying to take off all the saw marks. And I'm working on the pointiest parts Knots are a little funny to work with because grain goes all over the place. So the sharper your knife is, the better it is at slicing through. I'm gonna cut as much of that dark out as I can. And what's cool about knots is because of that grain that goes all over the place, they often have really cool, it's called figure to them. And it's the way you cut through all those grains so you see the ends of the growth rings. And when you put oil on that, it's like this 3D optical illusion. They're really cool looking. You ever see like a fiddleback, like on a really beautiful violin, they have all that beautiful grain pattern, quilted maple or fiddleback maple. Each growth ring of a grain catches light in a different way. So if you have a whole bunch cut open to the end, you get a really cool patterns. It's just harder to carve. It's prettier though. Just really gently try to get those spots. It looks kind of cool when that neck's down like that, so I'm gonna get rid of this if I can, because this is that knot. So it's gonna get a little wily in here. Just don't want to make that too thin. It's been about 3 or 4 days since we last looked at this spoon. It's dried out quite a bit. You can speed this process up by putting it in the microwave for 30-second increments and driving all the moisture out. Probably takes you, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes. Don't let it stay in there too long because it will start a fire. I know, but from personal experience. It's weird because it burns from the inside out and it makes a lot of smoke. And the thicker the wood, the more moisture in, the faster it will do that.
I put mine in for 3 minutes one time and it was a big piece that was really wet. And it filled the area with lots of smoke. Didn't actually start on fire, but it was lots of smoke.
Most of our house was radio frequency dried, all the beams for this house, and instead of months, it takes 24 hours to dry the beams, which is amazing. So then at the time, there were only 2 radio frequency dryers in the world. One was in Forest Grove and the other was in Singapore. Actually, what I did even before that was use my scraper at the very beginning, and that kind of takes off some of the facets from the knives. Cuts, go downhill as much as I can. And I think I'm about ready for my next step down, 220. Sanding takes the longest, so another thing I like to do is use a torch on it and make it all black. Carbonize it all, and then you just rub it off with paper towel until no black comes off on your paper towel, and it looks really cool. Now that it's all sanded smooth, we're gonna get it wet to raise the grain, because the first time you wash it, it'll raise the grain, which means wood likes to soak up water, and anything that's sticking up that I've been pushed down with the sanding will pop up. So I'm gonna get it wet, and it's not too bad. I can feel it's definitely not quite as smooth as it was. Certain woods it's really apparent, like oak and things with an open pore kind of grain. I'll just let it sit and dry for a half hour until it's not wet on the outside, and I'll sand it again. And I usually do that once or twice until it doesn't seem like it's raising the grain anymore. And now it's time to oil our spoon. You don't have to do this step, but it makes it last longer and look nicer. My favorite is this pure raw linseed oil. Make sure it's raw, because if you use boiled linseed oil, they add a bunch of additives and things to make it dry faster. And the pure raw is good because it's food grade. The other stuff's not. Just pour a little bit in there. Just start working it in.